It was supposed to be another heated congressional hearing. But what unfolded shocked everyone. Jasmine Crockett, firebrand Democrat, came loaded for war, ready to accuse former President Donald Trump of corruption, of billion-dollar foreign deals, of abusing power for personal gain. Her voice cut like a blade, her documents stacked high, her tone fierce. But then, Marco Rubio happened. What started as a confrontation turned into a political annihilation. In front of cameras, reporters, and her own colleagues, Crockett delivered her final question, and Rubio delivered the blow that left her speechless. No spin, no stalling, just one calm, surgical sentence. She froze. The room exploded, and in that moment, Jasmine Crockett, usually sharp, usually fearless, had nothing left to say. This wasn't just a debate, it was a turning point. But to understand how we got here, we need to rewind, because this clash didn't start with silence. It started with an accusation that was meant to blow the roof off the room. And Crockett, she thought she had him cornered. The hearing room at Capitol Hill buzzed with anticipation. Cameras clicked, staffers shuffled, reporters whispered, pens hovering, waiting for a spark. Jasmine Crockett walked in with purpose. Her stride was confident, her eyes locked onto her target, Marco Rubio, seated calmly, barely glancing up. She took her seat, pulled out a thick stack of printed documents, and within moments, unleashed. "Mr. Secretary," she began. Her voice was sharp, commanding. "We're witnessing a serious issue. President Trump, who still owns the Trump Organization, just announced a billion-dollar Trump Tower project in Dubai." The room stirred. And only a day later, his cryptocurrency firm signed a $2 billion contract with a UAE company tied to that government. A few heads turned. Then your State Department bypassed this committee to approve a $1 billion weapons sale to that very same government. Crockett leaned forward, her tone now iron. "Is this coincidence, Mr. Rubio, or is this corruption?" She paused. The silence that followed was loud. One Democratic colleague nodded, lips tight. A CNN reporter scribbled furiously. Crockett wasn't finished, because what it looks like to the American people is that the former president is profiting from foreign deals, while your department clears billion-dollar sales to those same regimes. She stood taller. Are we serving U.S. interests? Or Trump's bank account? Gasps, murmurs. She'd thrown the first punch, and it landed with force. For a moment, even Rubio didn't move. She held up a printout from a corporate website, highlighted in yellow, Trump family, 60% ownership. Her hand shook slightly, but her voice didn't. "Mr. Rubio, how can the public trust your decisions when they benefit your former boss directly?" Boom. That was the moment she believed she had him. A trap, expertly set. All Rubio had to do was walk into it. But Rubio didn't. Instead, he did something far more devastating. He stayed silent, and what happened next flipped the entire hearing on its head. The trap had been set, the accusation delivered. And now, the room waited. Marco Rubio didn't flinch, he didn't blink, he didn't even look directly at Crockett. Instead, he tapped his index finger. Once, then twice. The sound echoed in the tension-choked air. 1 second passed, 2. Crockett held her stance, but her eyes began to search his face, as if trying to decode the silence. Then finally, Rubio lifted his gaze. Slowly. His eyes weren't angry. They were precise, measured, cold. And then he smiled. That smile didn't say, "I'm caught." It said, "You just handed me the floor." He leaned forward slightly, voice calm but razor sharp. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said almost gently, I understand you're trying to build a story. A dramatic one. One that makes headlines. Murmurs began to ripple. But foreign policy isn't built on drama, it's built on strategy, and your implication that billion-dollar diplomatic decisions are made because of a website is not just wrong, it's insulting. Crockett shifted. The momentum she had just moments ago, fading. You're accusing the former president of corruption based on timing, websites, and speculation. That isn't evidence, Congresswoman. That's a conspiracy. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Rubio had spoken less than 90 seconds, but he had already done what few politicians could, flip the entire room's energy without raising his voice. But Crockett wasn't giving up. She came to battle, and she was about to double down with something she thought would end the debate for good. Crockett's eyes narrowed. The silence had shaken her, sure. But she wasn't about to walk away, not without throwing her biggest punch. She stepped forward, lifting the printout higher. "Mr. Rubio," she snapped, her tone cutting now. "I'm not asking about foreign strategy. I'm asking about ethics. I'm asking why a former president, who still profits from foreign businesses, is linked to your department's billion-dollar arms deals." She pointed to the paragraph. "Trump owns 60% of this crypto company. The UAE deal happened days after a Dubai Tower announcement. Days, Mr. Rubio." She didn't let up. "This isn't speculation. This is profit. This is motive. This is conflict of interest in broad daylight." The room tightened. Even Rubio's aides shifted. Crockett felt the surge again, the same rush she had when she walked in. She was back in control. "Answer the question," she demanded. "Do you think it's ethical for a president to profit from a foreign government while approving arms deals to them? Yes or no?" She dropped the paper on the table and waited. This was it. The checkmate move. But Rubio didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back, let the silence return, then tilted his head with that same unsettling calm. "No," he said flatly. "I don't see an issue, because you haven't proven one exists." Boom. The sound of a dozen reporters flipping pages. A Republican congressman smirked. A Fox News staffer mouthed, "Got it." Crockett blinked, just once. The punch she thought would end it barely left a mark. And what Rubio did next wasn't defense, it was offense, because now he was done waiting. Now he was going to take control of the entire hearing and rewrite the narrative on live TV. Rubio didn't raise his voice. He didn't match Crockett's fire. He did something worse. He disarmed her with 3 words. "Let's be serious." The room exhaled. Rubio continued. "Congresswoman, you're not here for ethics. You're here for headlines. You're here to craft a moment that goes viral. And I get it. That's politics today." A few smirks from the Republican bench. Crockett shifted her weight. Rubio picked up the document she dropped, held it between his fingers like it was weightless. "This," he said, flicking the page, "this is a website, a public website. You're waving it around like it's a smoking gun, but it's just a disclosure statement, not a scandal." He leaned forward. "What you're doing isn't investigation, it's innuendo. You're building a narrative, not presenting a fact, and the difference, that matters." Crockett stayed still, her lips slightly parted like she was about to jump in, but didn't. Rubio didn't stop. "Our relationship with the UAE predates Trump. It predates this committee. You're tying national security decisions to a business venture based solely on timing. You call it coincidence or conflict. I call it lazy logic." The crowd murmured again. He smiled ever so slightly. "This isn't House of Cards, it's foreign policy." And just like that, he wasn't defending anymore. He was in control, but Crockett couldn't just sit back. She had one more card to play, a direct question she thought would force Rubio into a corner. Crockett stood, her voice steadier this time, but with an edge sharpened by frustration. "Mr. Rubio," she said, her eyes fixed on him, "I'm not talking about political theatre. I'm talking about a very real ethical question." She reached into her file again and pulled out a second printout. "This is from World Liberty Financial. It lists Trump family ownership at 60%. That company, sir, signed a $2 billion deal with a UAE entity shortly before your department cleared over $1 billion in weapon sales to the same country." She held it high. "If you can look the American people in the eye and say this raises zero ethical concerns, then say it. Plainly. Right now. Yes or no."
The room froze.
Rubio tilted his head. Again.
And smiled.
"Congresswoman," he replied, his voice smooth as polished steel, "you're asking me to answer yes or no to a question built entirely on assumptions." Crockett started to speak again, but Rubio raised a hand, barely, and continued. "But fine, you want plain?" He leaned in. "Number, I don't see an ethical issue with an American president owning legitimate businesses, especially not when there is zero evidence those businesses influenced any policy." He let it hang. "And unless you have that evidence, Congresswoman, what you're doing here is exactly what you accuse others of, abusing power to score political points." That one stung. Crockett stepped back.
She glanced at her papers. Her voice was still there, but the clarity, it was fading.
She tried to fire back, but the energy had shifted. Rubio had flipped the script. And next, he was going to bury the narrative for good, not with facts, but with dominance. The battle had shifted, not just in tone, in terrain. Rubio wasn't playing defense. He was reshaping the entire conversation. He folded his hands, speaking with the quiet command of someone who knows the crowd is listening. "Let me explain something that should be obvious," he said. "Our foreign policy is not dictated by who owns stock in a company. It's guided by decades of alliances, strategic priorities, and national security." He turned, slowly, to address the entire chamber. "The United Arab Emirates is one of our most critical partners in stabilizing the Middle East. It was instrumental in the Abraham Accords. It helps contain Iran. It cooperates in counter-terrorism." He let that settle. "If we walked away from that partnership today because someone, somewhere, doesn't like a business connection, that's not ethics. That's recklessness." Crockett didn't interrupt. She couldn't. Not because she had nothing to say, but because Rubio wasn't just defending Trump anymore. He was casting himself as the adult in the room, as the one thinking about the bigger picture. And in doing so, he made Crockett's concerns seem small, like political theatre. Rubio ended with one final sentence. "We can chase ghosts in the shadows or we can lead." The room was silent. Crockett's argument had been reduced to what Rubio wanted it to be. A distraction, and next he would prove it. But Crockett wasn't done. She had one last move, one final all-or-nothing question, and Rubio, he was ready to crush it. Crockett stood one final time, her eyes locked on Rubio's, her tone measured. "Mr. Secretary," she said, "let me ask this plainly. If this exact situation happened under a Democratic president, would you be defending it the same way?" Gasps, the kind of question meant to slice both ways.
Crockett delivered it like a checkmate, the perfect trap.
But Rubio didn't look rattled. He looked pleased. He leaned forward. "Congresswoman," he said, "I'm not here to play what-ifs. I'm here to talk about reality." Crockett opened her mouth. Nothing came.
Rubio pressed in.
"The reality is this. Presidents from both parties have owned businesses. The key question is not ownership, it's influence. And unless you can prove influence, the rest is noise." He paused, then delivered the final line. "The only corruption here is the attempt to weaponize coincidence. And, Congresswoman, Your entire narrative just collapsed under its own weight. Boom.
Audible gasp, then silence. Crockett's hands gripped her file.
She tried to speak, then stopped. Rubio sat back, calm, victorious. Around him, the chamber buzzed. On one side, thunderous applause. On the other, stunned silence. She had come for a reckoning, but he had delivered the reckoning instead. Crockett was left speechless, and Rubio, he didn't just win the moment, he defined it. He defined it.